So like Philip said, we're trying to focus this one on the axonometric drawing eventually, but also the digital version, right, of what you guys have been working on in your apparatus models. So hopefully you guys by now have some points. So you guys have some who has the point logs ready to go. Yeah, good amount of people. And does anybody actually model out the frame as well? Anybody? One? Couple? Good. It's ahead. So that's kind of where you need to be in terms of coming into the next step with your goal of actually having a full assembled system on the site so that you can do your axonometric drawing of it and also the montage drawing and then also the physical model. So it's going to lead to all three deliverables actually. It's kind of a gateway into it. The two things you need coming into this phase are the digital version of what just came out of that apparatus. So it's the new space frame of the column/cluster model that you have. Doesn't matter necessarily where in kind of Cartesian space it is, but it just matters that it's modeled out, just, curves from your points. And then the other one is, we talked about this little my group and to some other students. You want a kind of perfect model of the system itself, like so not the one that's actually it can kind of be based on the one that was project one, but it's also just based on straight lines, kind of just like straight out of the book so it's going to look a lot like your project one. And you can basically do that really quickly just by modeling the module once, or if you have two modules, you model both modules and you're kind of just copying and pasting, and it's not a ton of work as far as that's concerned. I think by this time you guys can probably do that in your sleep because you're so familiar with the modules themselves. So those are the two things that you want to have to bring in. And then kind of where we go with it is that we're going to create, the axonometric kind of completed version. Let me show you the site model, which is here. In blue are the ones placed on the site that have been modified. So in this case, you can think of it as the columns themselves. And then in black are the static frames. And those start out as the copies of the perfect version that we were talking about. And you can see that the other ones are kind of stitched on to the model. So the template includes this is a 3/16 version of the model. So it's the same exact size as your apparatus scale is at 3/16. So these models that are blue are analogous in terms of what you would have gotten your output of your points from. They're basically just like putting the points in and building the model from that. And those result in drawings like that, which are the axonometric. That includes the site and then the project on the site. You're going to have two options on that. You can have one at this that includes more of the site, and the other option is one that's a little bit more zoomed in. It's the same model. It's just cropped differently depending on maybe how big your site is, maybe what you, in terms of the orientation of the site and what you kind of think graphically works better with your presentation. The template outputs to both, and there's just two Illustrator templates. So you basically just choose which one to drop the Make 2D line work into. It's the same workflow either way. So how do we get there? Well, the first kind of step that you want to have to do is you want to populate the static grid as a series of as an entire series. So let me put away the thing that's been done and talk about that. We don't need to worry about the model yet, but if we talk about it in terms of I've got one of these static frames modeled out. So if you've got what I'm going to import mine, you could also just model it into this template. Let's see. So I've got mine right here. I've grabbed a module off of it just to show you like a possible way to assemble one of these. And this is just this module. This is two of them, but it's copied out of it and rotate it and kind of glue together side by side. So if I've got this, it all depends on your the kind of condition that you have. For this one, when I start thinking about how, and what I did is I just grouped it, the entire thing together. So I think about how do I want to repeat this? Well, this one, side to side, I know how it can repeat. So if I look at this, I can say it repeats by going side to side. It's a better point right here. Like that, right? And I'm kind of looking at the cross members staying in the same direction. And from that, I have these kind of key-shaped gaps. And then when I look and connect on the other ends, when I start to copy them over like this, that might be another method I could copy it as well. That's going to leave certain gaps. For this particular space frame, doing these kinds of copies doesn't cause any problems with my cross-diagonal members. They're not crossing each other up. People that had these kinds of systems know they want to keep them going in the same kind of direction. And that leaves these kinds of diamond-shaped gaps that happen in there. So that's one way to look at it. If you're worried about keeping it symmetrical in terms of what this shape is and you want to mirror that shape, you can do that too. If you do that, you'll notice that if let me kind of go back one step to here. So if I brought it around the other way and lined it up kind of like so they're sandwiching each other. Like this, you can see that that's going to cross up their cross diagonal members and they're going to create these X's here. So if you're worried about something like that, you can take this object and mirror it as well. And just basically mirroring it on a vertical axis will create a mirror image of it, and that the cross diagonals will all be going another way this time. A quick way to do it is in elevation, just go in like a front view and do the mirror on a vertical kind of axis, and then you don't want to use the copy option. So say copy no. Now the diagonals are going the same way, and then this can repeat in that direction as long as I want, and I'm guaranteed I'm always going to have the diagonals in the same kind of way. And I could use this piece to kind of plug it in there. So that's my logic that I want to do. Then the question is, well, how do I know what copies that I need and all that other good stuff? So that's when you would input previous project info. So that's when I would bring in stuff from project D. So I've set it aside, but you guys already have this info, and that's basically what your went to the wrong spot. What your flows were when it comes to the grid information itself and the flows and all that kind of good stuff. So this has my frames here and all that. I put this kind of stuff. It's called. I have it under Project 3 info. So I'm just going to place it in the previous projects here, and that's a redundant name. So I'm just going to. This has the site plan. It has the flows. It has the selected tiles. It used to be black. I changed the static tiles to have an orange color just to jump out from the topo a little bit. But everything else is the same. This also has the footprints, right? The 3 footprints. For this case, I just dropped them in there. Everything's flat. It's a 2D drawing. So what I want to do is, if you kind of take the long view of it, I've got this layer called Grid Placement Guide in here, and that Grid Placement Guide is directly underneath the 3D site model. So what you do is you can already place everything, align it to your grid, and then all you have to do is move it vertically to get up on this site. So you don't have to do like a complex movement or anything like that. So what happens is I had this grid placement guide locked, and I take this project info and I just move it over there to match up with it. I pick a better spot to move it from too. So usually when I'm doing any of this kind of stuff, I as a safety, I put on the project just to keep everything being 2D, just so I don't snap to something that's 3-dimensional by mistake. Whenever there's a lot of moving parts, I like to do that. So now that's in the right spot. I can take off that grid placement guide. And I've got the data from before for project 2. I'm going to lock some of this stuff like the site plans and turn off the flows for a second. And I'm going to take off the site plan so I can just see this situation here. And I can take down the touchdown so keep it simpler. So I know I've got that, right? I've got, in this case, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 by 4 grid. So I know like that's how many, that's the extent of my entire thing. So I'm going to group this, this one here. And since this one is now kind of working as a new module, I don't want to just repeat this one. I want to repeat them both. That way the tiling works out nice. I guess it's going to be different from everybody's, but I just wanted you to kind of see the logic. I can move this kind of key out of the way. I'm going to group these together, so I can just do Control G. I can have groups inside of groups inside of groups. And I'm going to make an array of these, and I think I said I need 4 in that direction, and I need 4 in that direction because these are too high now. So that'll give me 8. That'll give me more than what I need. So I'm going to do 4, and I'm going to do 8. Or sorry, 4. No, I'm not worried about the Z direction. In terms of my cell spacing, this will start to give me a preview, but I can do, if I do the cell spacing, if I just say X and Y, I can start to go like this. Now, what I kind of want to be is out here, but I can't snap to anything because nothing's out there. So if I turn on my smart track down here, I can pull off of this endpoint and this endpoint and find the intersection that occurs right there. And that's the cell spacing that I want for my grid system. So I would say okay on that, right? So as you can see, I know it's kind of hard with the curves, but I've got this kind of condition here where I've got holes in it. So, and maybe it's a little bit easier to see in perspective that I've got these kind of gaps, these holes that are falling in there. I can fill those gaps in as well, kind of easy with the array command. You always want to put, so I've got this as a grouped object. I think it's grouped, yeah, it's grouped. I'm using project here because I want to keep everything flat and planar, right? I'm never worried if I have the project on, if I move something in the Z-axis or anything like that. Everything is going down to the C-plane and not changing heights. I've got this end condition here. I'm going to leave it, and I can always go in here and modify these end conditions if I want to using this module. So this one's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 3. I'm going to do an array of 3 by 10 by 1, and my spacing on this one, actually I want to go start by a different point, start here and go up like that. That's gonna, nope, I need more Y's. There we go. So that's done in terms of being filled out. Now I can either count these now and start taking them out. I mean, mine's fairly simple and I can decide on what I want to do, or I can bring this whole thing over and pop them out too. It really doesn't matter. For this to get a good corner, I'm just going to do a bounding box on one that actually exists. So maybe it is a good idea to take some of these out right now just because it'll give me something better to snap to. So if I explode this group, or I can just do the ungroup. I don't want to explode it. Exploding will explode all the thing in it, but it won't ungroup it. Everything will stay ungrouped. So if I ungroup these, I can get rid of these guys right here. And that's a good corner to start to line things up to. So I can take this and move it over here. This just happens to be where my bounding box hits one of these guys. I kind of know that already. And I'm going to rotate them from that corner as well. So again, I'm kind of moving over on this one. So I'm going to come up here and smart track. Yeah. So in this case, I've got some extra ones that I can lose. And you decide if you want that one or not. I kind of like that there. And again, I can ungroup these two to break it down into smaller modules. And same thing goes for these, since I'm going to replace these with the deformation versions. Oops. Okay, so I'll get rid of those two. And you can decide what you want to do. Sometimes it's nicer to keep it rather than get rid of it, because it's easier to delete it than it is to go and find it and add it back to it. But let's say this is your setup and you're kind of happy with it, and you can see that in perspective, they're kind of all planar and they're attached. In the way that I did them, my diagonals, I'm not getting anything kind of funky going on it. So that's looking good. You can start to see why it's important to use the perfect one, that way that everything lines up kind of clean. So we've arrayed them. So the next thing to do is to add the cyclist cluster to the grid along with the other clusters. So I've got it here. What I'll do is I'll just bring it in. So I'll take a look at it. I think I've got it in a separate file here. And this is just the model itself hanging out. I've got a couple of other ones that are in there too. Those are the ones that are already in place up there. So I think I grabbed too many of them. Let me take that layer off. There we go. Cool. So if you've got it like this, it might not be that height. It could be another height. What this is for me is I've got them grouped as 3 separate ones, but I can treat it all as one group. So I'm going to Control G that to group it, and I'm going to place it in my actual setup here. So plan can kind of trick you on this one. You just want to find a good point to connect to. So I'm just going to start with one of these corners and look at what's going on with my grids. I know that this is a kind of a good start. I'm not so worried about getting it perfect the first time. I'm more worried about just connecting nodes with nodes, and then I can start to nudge them over. So if I get in the neighborhood here, and I'm kind of familiar with the way that mine tiles, I'm going to give this one a shot by connecting this corner to that corner. And I think that's right. So I'm going to rotate it. I can rotate this in 3D because the rotate is always about what the world C-plane is. Only if I can spell it though. So my center is going to be where they're already touching, and see how it's projecting down there. It just makes it easier. Go there, and I'm going to bring it over to there. And this one gets a little kind of harder to read in plan because things are already kind of distorting away from you. So this is, from this point on, perspective is kind of a better friend, but you can see the edge condition there, right? It's like consistent. So that's actually, well, I put it on the wrong one, but that's okay because it's the starting point for all of them. But that alignment is pretty good start for my other ones. So you can pretend that I did the cyclist one first. I'm going to copy it. And I'm going to copy this front corner and attach one back here. And one back here as well. And that other layer up there is when things got moved up. That's just one step ahead. I'm done, so I'm going to hit enter and get out of there. So now that these are in place, this is about the level of resolution that I'm worried about. The reason why these orange ones are kind of shining through is I just changed the draw order. That's something that if you guys have trouble with visibility and dropping things in, so if you're in your top view, If you don't do that, you won't see the blocks anymore. You'll just see the black frames, and you won't be able to see where your grid's supposed to be. So if you ever want to change that, in this case, these guys are these static tiles here. You can select the objects, and if you go into draw order, which is under this drafting tab too, and you can send objects to the back, you can send them to the front as well. So if I send them to the back, they're going to be behind the black, and I start to lose some of them, right? And if I select them and then I bring them to the front, they're going to shine through anything, no matter if it's surface, solid, it doesn't matter. It's going to shine through. So that's kind of helpful. And it doesn't matter what layer they're on either. It's just going to shine through everything. So that gets us to the assembly that we want. And the next thing to do is to get it up onto the grid itself. So let me take these off in terms of the selected tiles and bring it up. So it's all going to be a little bit different, but I'm going to use my guides to be the cycle one, which for me is back here. I'll put those back on there for a second. Back here is my cyclists, and I'm going to use that as a guide as to what goes where. So I'm already in the XY coordinates. I'm already in the right spot because that guide already lined me up there. So the only thing I'm worried about now is the Z value. And the Z value, I turn on my site model, which is this layer here, and it's kind of sitting below it. And yeah, I'm just going to bring it up so it's easier to kind of bring the gumball on there. Take my project off. I can also, in this kind of front view, start looking in the neighborhood of where I want to be and getting it on there. And I can start to, if I'm in a side view, I can start to use the project to do straight vertical kind of moves and stuff like that. And I can also use it in here too to do straight vertical kind of moves. So I think I said that this one is my cyclist one. Now mine's flattened out. Yours would already have some tilt to it, so yours would actually already give you a better idea of where it's supposed to be than mine. I'm just going to do a move. I'm going to lock it vertically and take the smart track off at this point because it's a little bit hairy. But one of the other reasons why we did a model like this is not only for the kind of graphical clarity, but for the leveling ability to take a node and find the right level for it instead of trying to hunt it down on some kind of triangulated face. It's really easy to snap to these things this way. So basically all you have to do is take a point and find one of the ridges it's by, and you're going to have all these end snaps because they're all little surface edges. And you can snap right to it, and it's going to put it on the spot that it needs to be. And you can always go and kind of check yourself in the other view to see, once you get familiarizing with levels or something like that. So it's kind of easy to do that and get that on there. Once it's on there, you're kind of in the neighborhood for everything else. Everything's going to kind of need adjustments. The way you would kind of adjust it is really simple. You want everything grouped, and then once everything's grouped, you can turn on its control points. So you can hit F10 or you hit the button here to turn the control points. And it's going to keep all the control points in one spot for you. So all you really have to do is worry about drawing a big enough box around the control points and getting it on there. So I've got this one down already, but let's say I want to bring this one down. If you've ever worked on this kind of stuff, you know, like if I start right now I've got this site model locked, so I can't grab it. It allows my box to draw fine. That's one way to take care of yourself. The other way is if you've got other stuff you're worried about grabbing, I don't know what you'd have, but let's just say in the future you do. If you hold down Alt, so I'll unlock it, and instead of dragging the objects behind it, Alt forces a selection window, so it doesn't let you click select. It lets you just grab it anyway. So it's ignoring anything that it touches, and it's just forcing the selection box. Anyway, I can grab this, turn on my gumball, and bring it down to the point. So I'm snapping to the end here of whatever one that I want. So it looks like this one, I make a decision on how I want to kind of situate this. Do I want to take it all the way down and start to pull the frame into the ground? I can also rotate my camera up a little bit, and with this gumball I can do a planar move over and sit it at this level as well. So this is these kind of like small level adjustments you can make to sit the thing down. What you'll start to see is you've got this condition here where do I want to keep it planar in some areas and project out? Do I want to bring everything down or not? But the general workflow is just that. And if you're not sure about, well, did I use this one or that one? I can start to use tags and everything else. If you get a weird gumball like that, it might be just the settings. So you want to make sure two things, that it says snappy dragging and then it's aligned to the world. If it's aligned to the object, you might get some weird kind of directionality going on to it. So just click that little tail there and say align to the world, bring it down to there, right? You're going to kind of repeat and rinse, and that's the kind of workflow for all of them. Some of them are going to be closer than others. Like if you're in this kind of condition and you lost them, you can still, there's a couple different ways you can go about it. If you kind of lose the selection of him, but you can still kind of do one of those and grab the points. But you can also turn on wireframe as well, and you'll be able to see the points again. At least enough to grab them. The other thing you can do is take these guys, if you're in that condition, and do what I was talking about, is change and have their draw order change. It might make it a little confusing, but it might actually work for you too. So I'll try it. I haven't done this, but I'll give it a shot. If I bring it to the front, then even though that thing's underneath it, I can still see it. That's not that bad. For some reason, I can't see its control points. That's not that cool, but they're there. So I'm just kind of marking where this is. In this case, gumball is my friend because I know I can't do any moves that I don't want to do. So this kind of method can also help you if you need to make any kind of adjustments. If you've got any kind of torque that happened in here and you need to realign your space frames, you can start moving these as well, do any kind of adjustments here. I also think it's good if you want to make any kind of adjustments in your attachment. If this is lower and you want to start to adjust these systems to do it as well, you can start making kind of changes on it as well. Right. And you can do whole scale changes and stuff like that too. But I would really make it contextual, kind of based on what's going on. Remember, you can temporarily deactivate your snaps by holding down Alt, and that'll keep your snaps from coming. So let's say you've done that, you've made your adjustments on the site. You've kind of got everything pretty close, at least enough that you can do like a test print for the pinup and say, I at least want to get some feedback on that. And then I want to project the axonometric. As you can kind of tell, this is a lot of geometry, right? You've got not only the space frame, which has a half a dozen thousand menus or members, and it also has this topography, which, because I want to give you lots of geometry to snap to, has a lot of geometry built into it. It's a layered series of extrusions. There's like 60 odd extrusions in there. That's why actually the way that this works is if you look at the template, there's two. There's this one that's the more zoomed in view and the more zoomed out view. The topo is already in the Illustrator template because of the nature of the projection, the land can't occlude the space frame. Like it can't block it because we're looking on this top-down view and our topography generally goes like this. So we're not worried about the land blocking it from our view. We can literally just project. If we align things right, just project the frame and drop it onto the topo that's already in the Illustrator file instead of trying to do the axonometric for the topo at the same time and then do the make 2D and then drop it in there. So it's going to save a lot of kind of spinning blue wheel depending on, you know, your version of Windows. I don't know what the new one does. So we're going to go back and use our friend, the axonometric definition. I'm going to include a new one of it, but really the only difference that I did with it is that I set the degree to match the template drawing that we're going to use, which is 45 to the left, and the placement of it. The placement of it's specific because the placement of it drops it into one or two frames that you can use. I'll wait for my display to catch up here. So in the model, there's a frame that references both of these kind of options. There's a frame that references this option and a frame that references that option. And there's a third frame that you scale everything to. So yeah, it was thinking a little bit because I have everything assigned to it. So this is what we're not doing. I'm going to go to my top view, and what I'm really projecting, I'm going to lock my my site model, and I'm selecting the stuff that we were just working on, all my space frame stuff. And I'm going to go to the top, and I'm going to reassign that geometry to there. That's a lot less thinking. That thing automatically pops up and comes in. And I'm going to turn on the layer here. So if you look, you will have far few layers because I've got demo stuff in here. But there's layers called Axon Drawing Frame Option 1 and 2. So the less zoomed out version is Option 1, and the other one is Option 2. And that's where you would do the Make 2D and then bring it in there. So let's say I want to do Option 1. I turn off Option 2. I'll do a new layer for my baked space frame. And I'm going to bake the space frame to that layer. Oh, I already have one called Bake Axon. Whoops. Fair enough. So turn my grasshopper off. That looks good. This is ready to get exported. Full size. Oops, not ready to get exported. I jumped the gun. I need to scale this guy. So there's a frame called Export Drawing Frame, which is a 2x2 square. That's all it really is. So I'm going to move my drawing over to that. I'm better off copying it just to be safe. And scaling that to that. And exporting that. Full scale. And I picked option 1, right? Okay, so the only thing with this is, to get ready for it, this is already done in terms of the color and the line weights and all that. We just want to make sure it's on the right layer. There's a spot for drawings. When I do this stuff, I'm gonna drop it in that spot for drawings and use that frame to move it over. So, I mean, I can always move it like this. I can also take my transform and register to the top left because this border is 1/2 inch. Well, that one doesn't matter because this is a 24x24, so I can actually just say 0 and 0 for the X and the Y. And that way I can just use the math on that one. And take this drawing, and I'm going to look at my space frame that's baked, and I'm going to change it to be 0.5, and I'm going to use true black, get rid of the fill. Shows up a little light, but we did some test prints, and it'll print darker, as you guys have kind of done. Same workflow for option 2. I just would have picked the option 2 frame, use the option 2 template. That thing is ready to go and already lined up too. Workflows exactly the same for that. So kind of going into it, the provided stuff is the Rhino template, the 2 Illustrator templates, the Grasshopper. You can also use those values if you don't want to use that preset one. You just have to use the same values to drop it into the right place.